In Total War Saga Troy, you'll be conquering new lands, commanding massive armies, and leading your people to prosperity against the backdrop of the epic and legendary tale of the Trojan War. With control over everything from what you build in your cities to your tactics on the battlefield, Total War Saga Troy has a lot of systems that are easy to learn, but challenging to master. Over the course of 3 videos, we're going to cover the basics of how to govern your people, how to command your troops, and how to dominate the battlefield. In this video, we're discussing how to control your troops on the battlefield, from the most basic to the more advanced systems in place. The first order of business on the battlefield is knowing how to select your units to give them the appropriate orders. Selecting individual units is as simple as left-clicking on them to select them individually. But to select larger number of units at the same time, there are a few different ways to go about it. For one, you can left-click and drag out a box to select all of the units within that box. Alternatively, you can hold down Control to select individual units together, no matter how far apart they are on the battlefield. And finally, you can select one unit, hold down Shift, and select another unit to draw a line between those two selections and select every unit that falls in between. This, however, can be a relatively inconsistent method of selection, as you can see here, and can cause a fair bit of chaos, so it's best not to use it unless you have a clean, straight line that you can draw. All of these selection methods outside of the box can be used down here as well, where you can see the unit cards. That means you can left-click to select units individually, you can hold down Control to select multiple units one by one, or you can select one unit, hold down Shift, and select another unit to quickly select every unit between those two cards that you clicked on. As you can imagine, all these methods of selection can still be pretty cumbersome in the heat of battle, and that's where groups come in. Groups can be as small as one individual unit. They can be established very quickly by simply selecting the units in question and tapping G. This will assign the first available number to that group, and now you can select that group by tapping that number on your keyboard. If a group needs to be unassigned, have the group selected and tap G once again to unassign the number. This will allow you to reassign the number to a different group as and when needed. Again, groups can be as small as one individual, 2 units, or the entire army. Sometimes, you'll want to choose a custom number for a group. To demonstrate that, let's go ahead and select all of our archers. We'll hold down Control and tap the number 3. This will assign them the number 3, so now I can quickly select them by tapping that on the keyboard. It's good to develop habits as to which type of unit is given which number, so that on the battlefield, it becomes second nature. You'll notice as well that groups have this little lock icon above them. That's because groups exist in 2 types. Locked groups behave differently from unlocked groups, and we'll touch more on this later. By default, groups are unlocked. Let's go ahead and click this button to lock our group of archers together. Now, selecting units is all well and good, but to actually engage the enemy, you have to learn how to move and how to attack. So let's begin this battle. Units can be moved either individually, as multiple numbers together, or in groups. Let's start by demonstrating with one individual unit. All you have to do is select the unit in question and right-click on the battlefield. This will send them running towards that destination, which is a great way to get to a place quickly. However, it can be bad for fatigue, which is something we'll touch on in a later video. By tapping R, you can tell a unit to march to their destination instead, or you can use this toggle button down below. Marching from place to place is, again, slower of course, but much better for fatigue. Now, just as you can give that order to an individual unit, you can also select multiple units and right-click on the ground to send them forward as well. Now, it can be a little hard to tell where these units are going to end up, and a little hard to stay organized. So let's go ahead and press spacebar to take a look at their ending destinations. As you can see, it's quite a mess. So rather than giving orders individually, what we should do is select the units in question, hold down the right mouse button, click, and drag. This allows us to determine destination, orientation, rank, and file. A much more organized way of setting up our groups. Now, let's go ahead and get our archers up front as well. Since they're in a locked group, when we hold down the right mouse button, their rank and file will stay locked. That's inappropriate for our current circumstances, so let's go ahead and unlock the group and customize that rank and file. We can get a bit more precise with our placement. As they're getting into position, let's go ahead and get these two sword units into position as well, using a different method. We've got them selected. By holding down Alt, left-clicking, and dragging, I can get pretty precise about where they end up. And if I hold down Control with Alt still held down and the left mouse button held down as well, I can figure out their rotation and again get pretty precise and let go of Control, finesse their positioning, let go of the left mouse button, and they'll rush their way over. Now we've got a few more units back over here. Let's go ahead and give them the order in a slightly different way. To get more complex with movement paths, we can either set waypoints by holding down Shift and right-clicking multiple times along a path, or the faster way to do it is to hold down Shift, hold down the right mouse button, and click and drag. This draws a much smoother path out and can be an ideal way to circumvent enemy lines or find that perfect gap to get between them. Now, as the enemy is getting closer, you can see our archers are getting a little excited and are looking to perhaps engage Achilles over here if he gets within our range. Unfortunately, he's coming in from the side and we're just not able to fire on him. Let's go around and tell our archers to open fire. A simple right click will have them rotating and firing away at Achilles as he closes the gap. As you can see, a very quick response and rotation. Let's get our melee troops diving in as well. Let's select and double right click to get a charge going and dive into Achilles. Now you can see he's using his abilities to try and stay alive in this engagement, and our archers are still able to fire away, but at times archers will hold their fire against an enemy if there's a chance of friendly fire, which you can see with these arrows turning red back over here, and the tooltip telling you they've been obstructed. Now, it's not often you'll be fighting one individual on the battlefield, so let's go ahead and transition to something a bit more complicated to show you some of the more advanced attacking techniques. The battle ahead of us is a touch more complex than taking on just one individual, so we would be wise to take advantage of our deployment phase. During the deployment phase, all the selection and movement techniques shown previously apply. However, your troops will simply teleport to their destinations and no fatigue will apply. It's important to note that deployment can only be taken place within the deployment zone unless you have a specific unit that is able to vanguard deploy, in which case they'll be able to deploy elsewhere as well. But that's a topic for later time. Good idea to observe the terrain and see what we can take advantage of. For example, this ridge over here, where we can seek out some cover for our archers. Let's go ahead and select our archers, get them grouped up nice and early as we'd like them to be, just in the deployment zone to save us some time later on. Let's go ahead and deploy them along the ridge over here. Now, this is a great defensible position, so it'd be a good idea to hold it. There's a few ways to ensure that our archers do exactly that. Down over here are a handful of toggles. The one we're looking for right now is guard mode. Turning guard mode on ensures that your units will not chase the enemy that they're targeting. This applies to melee units as well as ranged units, but is particularly helpful when you're trying to hold the ground as either classification. You can also consider turning skirmish mode off. Skirmish mode is only applicable to ranged units, and it ensures that they keep a safe distance from the enemy. It's a good idea to have it on for units like chariots, but for archers that are holding safe ground, you're better off turning it off so they don't retreat unless you give them the order to. Finally, we're going to keep fire at will on, though at times if you're setting up an ambush, you might want to switch it off so they won't be easily spotted before you want them to be. Here, we have the toggle melee mode, to be used in desperate circumstances only. But there's a much more efficient way to force a ranged unit into melee. We'll touch on that when the time comes. Let's finish off our deployment over here by spreading some of our troops out and ensuring that we're able to cover all access points to this defensible ridge that we have. Again, we don't have to get too complicated over here. Let's just prepare for the enemy to attack us. As the battle begins, we can see the enemy is deployed far off over there, but they are moving to engage us right away. Now you can see they have some ranged units in the form of slingers, and they have quite a few melee troops as well, but they're all young spears, no shields or anything to be concerned about. All of these details which can be seen on the unit card over here. keeping us informed of who we're engaging and how we should go about engaging them. You can see as well, Achilles is headed over, already using Blood of Heracles to help his melee attack buff and to increase his rage. Rage is essential for your heroes. As you can see, Hector doesn't have any ability to increase his rage by default. He'll have to engage in battle to increase his rage. And once he does so, he'll be able to use the rage abilities. These abilities provide a variety of buffs and can truly turn the tide of battle. However, yes, you do need rage to be accumulated to trigger them. When the time comes, you simply left-click on the ability, and it'll either automatically trigger, or, in certain circumstances, you'll have to select a target to trigger it onto. Now, as the enemy comes closer, you can see our archers have automatically started opening fire if they're within range. That's because, again, fire at will is on. If we'd like to focus fire, it wouldn't be a bad idea to select multiple units and right-click on the unit we'd like to fire upon. Now, we can concentrate the damage delivery to where we think it's most important. Now, as these two are coming towards us, let's go ahead and group these two units together and send them charging in. You'll see they'll both attack this same unit. So let's try something a little different on the other side here. Let's go ahead and create a locked group with these guys and send them charging in as well. Now here you'll see they go in different directions. That's because when you have a locked group, giving a charge command automatically assigns what the closest appropriate target is to ensure there's a proper spread of engagements. There's no such thing as an attack move order either. As you can see over here, our troops pass through these young spears and engage the order that we gave them. This can both be good and bad if you're not paying attention. Back over here, it seems we've broken the enemy. Let's go ahead and keep giving chase against these slingers. Let's have our archers having a good time as well. Get a little run in. We'll hold down Alt and right-click on the enemy here to send them charging into melee. Now, sending your ranged units into melee is for desperate times only. However, they can still be used for flanking maneuvers and other tactical advantages that, again, we'll touch on later. Back over here, let's go ahead and get Hector moving in against Achilles and see if we can't provide some assistance against this very threatening epic hero. At the same time, our spear fighters over here left in reserve can be sent around to get some rear charges on the enemy as well, using that shift, right click, and drag method to provide them a curved path so they don't block our archers or go through Achilles and get tied down instead. Meanwhile, you can see over here we've got these young spears packing. Let's turn these renowned swordsmen around with a nice right click on the young spears to engage them instead and prevent a rear charge. Now, as Hector has arrived, we can start seeing his rage increase, very slowly, but it's better than nothing. As that increases again, we'll have access to his various abilities that we'll be able to use to buff up our units as needed. This battle is pretty much in the bag. There's not much to be worried about. Relatively weak troops. Achilles is all that's left to fight, but I think Hector will do a perfectly fine job. As you can see, these commands give you the basic tools needed to command your troops effectively on the battlefield, allowing you to select them as and when needed and give them precise orders to ensure your success on the battlefield. Knowing how to give orders is all well and good, but knowing which orders to give is what ensures mastery of the battlefield. So, in our next video, we'll be discussing tactics to use on the battlefield to ensure your dominance.